Today's show is sponsored by Limitless Productions. Limitless Productions, where our philosophy is simple. If I don't see what you see, show me, and we'll see together and change the world, one day at a time. Reporting live daily from the hilltop, the west side, the east side, south side, and the north side. Wolf is there for you to help you check on your people. We're also sponsored by Manelli's Pizza. Manelli's Pizza philosophy is quite simple as well. If you can't poop, have a slice. Manelli's Pizza, putting you in the bathroom for over 50 years.
When you're trying to complete a trade in fantasy football or you denying a trade in fantasy football, you gotta look at more than name value. You must take actual production into consideration. Don't say no involving a trade with a player just 'cause he ain't the biggest name or he new to the scene and he emerged. He putting in that work. Do the damn deal. The most perfect example in fantasy, James Robinson. Someone is offering you James Robinson, you best take that, dog. See, you won't, 'cause you treating him like your Uncle James Robinson from down the block instead of the stud running back that no matter what, get the job done. On the flip side, folks be like, I give you Julio. Swearing they doing you some favor. Like, bruh, this ain't 2016, dog. Fantasy football, you want more game than name. Right now, a player like Elijah Mitchell is more game than name. See, nah, don't nobody want that, though. Remember when Cooper Kupp wasn't no big name? Yeah, I remember them days. Well, there goes that. Get out your feelings and get players who ballin'.
Yeah, Hulk Hogan, I remember way back when the Mega Powers were bonded, yeah. You made a lot of promises to the Macho Man, didn't you? Promises that you didn't keep. I remember one specific one, yeah. You promised that Elizabeth would never be in a dangerous position. You broke that promise, didn't you?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the FWO show. I am your guest host this week, Bronco Libre. We are now through week 7. We're going into week 8. This is the Halloween week, so anything can happen, as we know. We're going to go over a few things as usual. We're going to go over last week's results. We're going to go over our new standings, our power rankings. We're going to go over our predictions. We'll hear from the dog. The top dogs report is going to come up for you with the dog's top dogs. We're going to go over everything that's league related as we usually would. So let's get right to it. Our standings, updated standings as of this week. We have a little movement in some areas, but not much going on. We do have Craig, who did take his first loss of the week to Grubby. Grubby has now won 2 straight games. This one over the number 1 seed, Craig, the Gooch. We have myself dropping from 2nd to 3rd. Josh now takes over in that number 2 spot. Josh has now won 5 straight games. So after starting the year in the gutter, he is now all the way up into 2nd place. He should be a role model to all of you. I am just a superhero. Josh should be your role model. Now, as I mentioned, dropped down to 3rd place after a very tough loss this past week to Officer, what's he going by this week? Officer Doofy. I wanted to say Officer Bad Boy. So Officer Doofy hands the London Lions the loss. And it was after a matchup where the London Lions, I know I spoke to him, and he had said specifically going into Sunday, he didn't think he was going to win. He felt he was probably going to lose by around 8 or 10 points. But lo and behold, the Saints defense and Demario Davis came in like superheroes, storming Gotham City, and they almost gave him the win. It actually came down to the very final play of the week. How fitting is that for real suspense, real drama? Let's take a look at that play. Before we go to that play, real quick, the lead up to this is the London Lions were down by just under 3 points, all right? With almost no time left on the clock in the Saints-Seahawks game. Down by just under 3. The London Lions has the Saints defense and Demario Davis. That's very important to note. Because if it was just the Saints defense and this play is intercepted, Jeffro loses by even less than he lost by here. But with it being Demario Davis on this final play, would have taken the win on the absolute final play of the week, which almost never happens. In fact, I would venture to say it probably has never happened on the final play of the week where an outcome is decided. Let's take a look at that play. Look at the fingertips. Fingertips. Right there. Oh, my God. That's Demario Davis, guys. That's not just some other guy. It's not just some random linebacker. That is the actual Demario Davis. He gets that pick. That's 3 points for the interception just for Demario Davis alone, not to mention the extra point there for the Saints defense. So the London Lions ends up losing by just under 3 points. And if that play would have happened, I think he would have won by about 2 points, roughly 2 points. So unbelievable that play happens right there. Even superheroes need coffee. Starbucks, vanilla, sponsor. All right, next up, we have the Russ Bun. Russ loses the matchup this past week, right? I believe he lost. He loses to Dan, last place Dan. So you got Grubby and Dan coming through The final two spots, 11th and 12th place, is coming through with big wins this week. Dan beats the number 4 seed. Grubb beats the number 1 seed. Just huge for their morale. I'm sure it does nothing but boost them. We'll talk in a second about Dan. I know he didn't move up in the standings necessarily, but that's going to be a morale booster, something to build off of. Joe and James ended up playing each other last week. Joe comes away with the victory, if I'm not mistaken, right? Let's take a look here. No, excuse me. Forgive me. James comes away with the victory. The big victory. Wins by 33 points last week. And he ends up flipping with Joe. So they have flip-flopped, I believe, the last 3 weeks. Either 2 or 3 weeks in a row. Forgive me. Either 2 or 3 weeks in a row. Joe and James have flip-flopped their positions at 4 and 5. So that's where they're at right now. You have James moving up a spot, Joe dropping a spot. Keegan goes into 8th place. As mentioned a moment ago, he beats me. So Keegan moves up 1 spot right there. So you got the number 9 beating the number 2. That was another big upset that you wouldn't have expected to happen. It was Bimageddon last week. A lot of crazy things happened on Bimageddon. Next up, we have Darb. So Gary ends up getting the win last week, the black hole. He actually scores the most points in the league last week as well at 148 points. And absolutely destroys Chris. Destroys Mahomes going down, Trump and Pump, whatever you want to refer to him as. Beats him 148.17 to 66.37, an 81-point win. Not the biggest win in league history. That was, I believe, 99 points, if I remember correctly. But still, just an absolute shellacking. Next up, we have the Grubb. So, Grubb, we talked about it a moment ago, beating Craig. Grubb moves up 2 spots. He's our biggest mover of the week as far as a positive move. He goes up 2 spots, and he is now in playoff contention. Moves into the 9th spot. Next, we have TJ, who was the actual biggest mover of the week, but it was not for the positive. He moves down 3 spots. TJ's luck continues to just go in the wrong direction. He actually scored pretty decent last week. TJ winds up with 119 points, so it wasn't like he stunk up the bed with 90 or 100 points. He did get 119, but he does lose his 3rd straight. Chris, we mentioned a moment ago, he's moved down 1 spot. He is now down at the 11th spot, so he's down in the 11th place for the league right now, and he is at 2 and 5. So TJ, Chris, and Dan now all at 2 and 5. So Dan gets another win, and these guys don't. He quickly goes from 12 all the way up to, 10th place? So it's a quick move. A win or two can make a big difference. Okay, so that's where we're at with our standings. We have Craig still in 1st place. We have myself slipping to 3rd, Josh moving into 2nd, Russ rounding it out, staying in the 4th spot. So that's where we're at right now with our standings. Again, not a ton of movement at the top. The big movement was down at the bottom. So, and I say big movement, I know it's only small baby steps, but it's in the right direction, and that's what matters. All right, so now let's go to the power rankings, updated power rankings for the year. So at the top, we have my London Lions staying in 1st place. London Lions, I got 5 wins last week. He now has 52 on the year. We have TJ, moves up 1 spot. TJ ends up getting 4 wins last week. He's now at 47 wins on the year. Craig drops a spot. Craig shit the bed last week. Only got 2 wins last week. He's now at 46 wins on the year, moves to 3rd place. Rounding out the top 6, Keegan, Josh, Russ, all end up staying in the same positions. Keegan and Josh with 44 wins, Russ with 39. From there, you have James, ends up getting 8 wins last week, 8 big wins to move up 1 spot. He is now at 35 wins on the year. He is now at 7th place. Darb, the Darb father, moves up 2 spots, the biggest mover of the week. Darby gets the highest score, gets 11 wins. He's now got 35 wins, tied with James, so he's back up in contention in the power rankings. Joe ends up dropping 2 spots, only 1 win last week. He's now got 33 wins. Grubby is up 1 spot, 10 wins last week, 10 big wins, goes to 33 points. Dan moves out of the cellar in this position in the power rankings, gets 9 wins last week. He's now got 28 points. He moves up a spot, so no longer in 12th place there. Hopefully, is the changing of the guard for his sake in both standings in the actual and the power rankings. And then Chris, the absolute just massacre last week. 66 little points, just little dick energy. Gets no wins. He's now at 26 wins on the year. Put that in perspective. 26 wins on the year for Chris in last place, down 2 spots. Forgive me, the London Lions has double those points with 52 on the year in 1st place. So there's your power rankings for the week. Okay, so now we're going to talk about last week's matchups. We're just going to quickly go over the final scores and a quick look at how they looked. Our average margin of victory stayed pretty high this week. It's moved up the last 2 weeks now in a row where we were down around 20 to 22 point average margin of victory. We've now been over 30 points back-to-back weeks. We had a 32-point margin of victory last week for the average margin. Looking at the first matchup of the week, which was, I believe, the closest matchup of the week, if I'm not mistaken, myself and Keegan. Keegan beats London Lions by 3 points. The next matchup, we had the Black Hole, who ends up mollywhopping Chris. Beats him by 81.8 points. Then we have the Gooch, also got mollywhopped. Gets mollywhopped by the IR Warriors. loses to them by, 35 points. The Dangerous Mollywopped gets mollywopped by the Dan. Dan beats him by 28 points. The Sheriff ends up beating his own brother by roughly 11 points. And then the final matchup of the week, speaking of brothers, we have another mollywop as James ends up beating Joe, beats him by a margin of 33 points. Fuck! Now, next order of business, let's talk about the Survivor. We forgot to talk about the Survivor last week, and we're getting into crucial times. We've actually had some movement in the Survivor these past 2 weeks. Let's pull it up and take a look here real quick. All right. So the Survivor standings now, we have one person still eliminated. Naturally, they can't come back from the dead. They're not me or The Undertaker. So we have Grub, who went out in week 5. He's got his 3 strikes. We now have 3 people with 2 strikes. Those 3 people being Keegan, Joe, Darb, all with 2 strikes. Everybody else has a clean plate. So the important thing to note, this is the final week of doing just one single Survivor pick. So keep that in mind. Choose wisely, because beginning of week 9, you have to make 2 picks. So you could lose as many as 2 games next week, starting next week for the remainder of the season until we have a declared winner. So keep that in mind. Survivor picks. Do not forget to make your Survivor pick. Pick wisely. Or don't. I want to win. I mean the London Lions. They want to win. So we've talked about our current standings, our power rankings, last week's results, the Survivor. Let's go now to our roving reporter with the Dogs' top dogs.
Oh, yeah. That's right, it's me. It's the king. It's the macho man. And I'm here to deliver the top dogs for week number 7. Oh, yeah. So, if you look at the top of the list, you get the returning greatest of all time, Tom Brady. He's back on his list, and, yeah. Let me pitch it over to somebody else to finish this list off for you. Back to you. Back to me. Oh, yeah. Guess I'm still here. Talking, yeah. You see it, running back. We've got Derrick Henry for week number 5 in a row. Yeah. And making his debut this week and bringing his owner, Josh Beller, up to the top dogs list. We got Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. And now we've got some familiar faces. Cooper Kupp 5 weeks, Tyreek Hill 4 weeks, and Travis Kelce at 5 again. Yeah, you look down that list, you'll see that I've got 2, and Craig's got 2, and we've got Josh, and we've got Russ. And then you move on to the second half of the list, you got some flex spots to fill, yeah. Austin Eckler, week number 5 in a row. And then you've got DeAndre Swift, who brought his buddy Keegan onto the top dogs. Yeah! Cup of coffee in the big time, maybe a couple of donuts in the meantime. Oh, yeah. And then you've got Joey with the next 2. Arizona defense, yeah, didn't do too good against those Packers, no. Yeah, but after that you got Nick Folk, and then Grubb's got Roquan Smith, and James makes his debut with Devondre Campbell, yeah. Down on the MIA list, you've got Chris Martin. Sorry, buddy. Maybe next year. Daniel, better luck. Next year, yeah. Gary Darby and Jeff Rowe. Maybe next week, we'll see. I don't know. And that's it for your Halloween edition of Top Dogs.
All right, starting with our first matchup of the week, we have the London Lions and T-Bone. T-Bone off to a rough start. Keep in mind, this is now post-Thursday's Packers-Cardinals game. And for the T-Bone, he had Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins combined for less than 10 points. What the fuck? If Kyler Murray by himself gets 10 points, that's news enough. But both of them combined less than 10, and it wasn't even necessarily about an injury. Now, Hopkins did get injured for a period of time for that game, but he came back, I do believe, and less than 10? Those are his 2 top players. Honorable mention to Austin Eckler, who, by the way, might be out this week. This guy might get fired on his fucking day off. He's coming off of a bye, went into the bye healthy. Now he might not even play this week. Who gets fucking fired on their day off, Austin Eckler? So with that said, the London Lions is now favored to beat T-Bone by roughly 50 points. And looking at the matchup, enough said. Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins with 10. I'm going to predict that the London Lions literally kicks the shit out of T-Bone barring injury, wins by 35 points. That's what I predict. Next matchup of the week, let's take a look here. Next matchup of the week, we have the Black Hole versus Officer Doofy. Can the Black Hole keep it going, coming off of that top score last week? Well, right now it's projected to be a close matchup. We already had a couple players play for each competitor. We had a defensive guy for Darb. Darb also had Robert Tonyan, who is now out for the season, in case you missed that note. Not a major loss. Well, whatever. Robert Tonyan gets him 5 points. Buda Baker gets him 6. So Darb's got 11 off the board here. And then you had 3 players go for Officer Doofy. You had 15.5 for Randall Cobb. Great play of the week. Just a fortunate thing for Randall Cobb and Keegan capitalizing on all those COVID cases there in Green Bay. You had Chase Edmonds come through and hit his projected mark. Gets him 13.5 points. And then you had Matt Prater. Matt Prater underperformed for what you would expect from a Cardinals kicker, especially Matt Prater, who was notorious for kicking 50-yard field goals. Gets him 3 points. So as it stands right now, Officer Doofy is projected to win by roughly 2 points. I'm looking at these matchups here. The quarterback matchup, it's all a matter of if Dak Prescott plays, and if he does, how hindered he will be. I think he's going to play. All signs say that he's going to. I think Randall Cobb was absolutely massive for Keegan. And, man, looking further down these matchups, you got Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill for Darb. Darb made a big trade this week. We know he's got Melvin Gordon going this week. Calvin Ridley on his team playing now for the last couple weeks, who we, by the way, got from Officer Doofy. Officer Doofy. Doofy's got Sweeney playing for the Bills. If Sweeney hits, then he wins, because it's fucking Sweeney filling in there in Buffalo. And, boy, this is a tight one. It's a tight one. Jerry Jeudy's back for the Broncos. We'll see how that impacts Cortland Sutton. Man, Leonard Fournette, DeAndre Swift has been playing well. Leonard Fournette, we know, plays well. Woo! Too close to call. Next matchup, we're going to go with the Gooch. The Gooch playing Chris. You know what? I could break this down. Chris scored 66 points last week. The Gooch wins. I'm not even going to look at the matchups. Look at this. Watch. A no-look pick. The Gooch wins. Gooch. Next matchup, we have the Dangerous. Dangerous versus the upstart IR Warriors. Can the IR Warriors do the unthinkable? Can they beat the number 1 seed last week, coming off a win versus Darb, the Black Hole, 2 weeks ago? Can they now beat the number 4 seed? Can they go through and be legend killers? Can they do it? Well, right now, it's a projected close matchup with 16.9 points already for Aaron Rodgers. A little bit of an underperformance. I don't know. It was kind of a tough spot for him to be in, playing at Arizona. But I think considering that he didn't have a couple of his weapons there, his receivers were out. Devontae Adams, most notably. Valdez-Scantling also out. My cousin, Valdez-Scantling. Now, looking at Aaron Rodgers, 16.9 points. He didn't have anybody else go on Thursday. Russ didn't have anybody go on Thursday. The matchups. Russ has Joe Burrow leading his charge. Godwin, DJ Moore. Of course, he's got Derrick Henry, the man. Alex Collins is questionable once again this week. Played last week. Didn't do very well. I think he wound up with about 5 points last week. Grubbs matchups. He's got Mitchell. Can Mitchell still be a good performer for the Niners? He's been doing okay the last couple weeks. He's got fucking Harris for the Patriots. He's got Cooper. I think Cooper's going to be hurt by Dak Prescott's injury. Dak's probably going to play, as we just mentioned, but I think Cooper's going to be impacted by it. Jared Cook at the tight end spot's been pretty inconsistent. I'm rooting for Grubb from just a fan standpoint, but I think Russ escapes with the win, somewhere 5 to 10 points. That's my projection. Next matchup, we have Dan. Here comes the man, hot damn. James' dick in his hand. Boom. Remember that line? All right. Next up, we have Dan. Dan is currently playing James this week. James with a projection right now to win by 13 points per Yahoo. We had Jerry Jeudy coming back for James. So we'll see how that impacts Zombie Jim. Zombie Jim's looking to climb up and eat Dan's ass. So Dan, he had Zach Ertz go for him this week on Thursday. He had 5.5 points. So-so for a tight end. You know, so-so. You hope for more. You don't expect more. It is what it is with tight ends. They're so fucking moody. They're so diva-ish. So Zach Ertz with 5.5 points. He's hurt by Kyler Murray's poor performance this past week. So looking at these matchups, James is going to be led by Carson Wentz, who is playing against the Tennessee Titans at home. We have Dan, led by Jalen Hurts, playing at Detroit. Detroit is due for a win. They're due to win. They're scrappy every week. Dan Campbell, I give you credit. You said that you guys were going to get knocked down and bite kneecaps on the way up. You've done that. You've proven yourself. You're a scrappy team. You're out there playing Madden football. You're doing onside. You're doing fake punts. Kudos to you. You guys could lay down and chalk it up, prepare for the draft. Fuck no. I salute to you, Dan Campbell. So looking at the matchups, DK Metcalf, kind of a fluky week last week. I think he only had 2 catches last week, but one of them goes for like 83 yards. So it's a little bit of a fluky week for him, but the points all count the same. Alvin Kamara dominated last week. I think James Robinson's in for a big week this week by all reports that I'm hearing. Dan's side of the ball, A.J. Brown, can't rely on him. Deontay Johnson for Pittsburgh, playing a tough game at Cleveland. Antonio Gibson still playing through the pain. He's got Javonte Williams. Oh, man, what a slap in the fucking face. James has to root against Javonte Williams this week. That hurts. Kenneth Gainwell. That's a big one for Dan this week. That's your X factor for this week, Kenneth Gainwell. You had his boy Sanders go down to injury, and you got Kenneth Gainwell stepping in. Can Kenneth Gainwell be the man? Is it going to be Boston Scott instead? Who knows? That's the X factor for Dan, for him to have a chance. If Kenneth Gainwell could go out there and kind of perform, I'd say like Cordero Patterson this week, where he ends up getting like 50 rushing yards, but also has like 7 or 8 catches. That's a key. That is a key for Dan. If he can perform, if Cordero goes out there, and I think he knows Cordero Patterson to get him 20 points this week to get the win. That's what I'm calling. Forgive me. He needs Kenneth Gainwell to get him 20 points this week. If Gainwell hits 20, Dan pulls the upset. Anything under 20, Dan loses. That's my projection. So with that said, I'm going to say that James wins this matchup by roughly, let's go with 7 to 15 points, right in that neighborhood. Final matchup of the week, the Sheriff versus Dogs. Excuse me. The Sheriff versus Dogs. And right now, the Sheriff is projected to win by 25 big points. Joe, oh man, you don't like to see it. You don't like to see it. Joe has the Arizona defense go for him this week, this past Thursday is what I meant. And we were all expecting more. I certainly expected they'd probably be in the neighborhood of 10 points over the Packers this week, even though they had Aaron Rodgers, even though they had Aaron Jones, didn't have those receiving weapons, they're playing on the road. Who knows who else is impacted? I think one of the coaches was impacted by it. But Arizona defense, 1 freaking point. 1 point, grossly underperforms what their expectation was. So looking at the rest of the matchups, Tom Terrific is leading Joe's squad. So Dogs with Tom Terrific. And now the new combo, Mike Evans, worth noting. That I love a combo. So does the London Lions. They both love combos. So you got Tom Brady, you got Mike Evans. He's got Russell Gage coming in as his wild card. Russell Gage had a nice week last week. Can he continue? Darrell Henderson, newly acquired Darrell Henderson for him. Big trade. We didn't even touch on the big trade last week. Speaking of the big trade, we'll talk about that to close the show. We had Khalil Herbert. He's got Khalil Herbert coming in. Can he give him one more week? I believe that Williams is back for the Bears this week, so we'll see how that impacts him. I think Herbert has played his way into a nice role, at least until Montgomery comes back. Over on the other side of the ball with the Sheriff, Adam Thielen, Deebo Samuel. You got the 2 studs for him, Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, the 2 20-point guys, the 20-point towers. You got Dallas Goedert, who has obviously got the role all to himself now there in Philly. Robert Woods, Keenan Allen, just got a solid team. He really does just have a solid team. I'm really curious about this matchup. This is the one I'm most interested in watching because Joe made some really big trades this week. I want to see how that affects his team. It could do nothing. It could do everything. We'll see. With all that said, the Arizona defense getting 1 point. My goodness, that hurts. That really hurts. That really is a kick in the nuts. So I got to go with my gut. I think the 20-point towers, Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, I think they keep the ball rolling for him. I think the only way that Joe wins is if Matthew Stafford goes out there and shits the bed in Houston. I think that's the key for Joe. And again, I'm going to give Josh the win. I'm going to say Josh wins this by 10 to 15 points. That's my projection. Excuse me, one more time. Excuse me. All right. Now, the final thing to talk about was the trades last week. Massive trades. There was a few moving parts, but ultimately the big parts of these trades were that the London Lions ended up trading away 2 top 15 running backs with Darrell Henderson and Joe Mixon. Trades them away to get this week anyways, projected number 1 running back, Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, we know, has been battling some injuries himself, coming off of a bye. I talked to the London Lions this week, and he's banking on the health of Dalvin Cook being a lot better because of the bye. All the reports that he read said that Dalvin Cook is fully healthy now. We'll see how that plays out for him. He did get Madison in the trade as well, just as a safety net. So we'll see how that affects the London Lions. And with Joe Mixon, you would think that'd be a match made for them. But there's no friends in fantasy football. There's only wins and losses. So Joe quickly sends Tyreek Hill and Joe Mixon to Darb, to the black hole. And in exchange, Joe gets back Mike Evans, and who else did he get in that trade? He got somebody else. I know Odell Beckham was part of the trade. I feel like there was somebody else involved in this trade. Forgive me. Let me take a quick look here. All right. The big trade. Tyreek Hill, Joe Mixon, Julio Jones, Melvin Gordon, 4 key players all go over to the black hole, to whereas Joe ends up with essentially Mike Evans and Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's still out for at least 1 more week We'll see if he comes back in 2-3, gives Joe a nice playoff stretch. If Joe can eke out another win this week, that's going to really play big for him because he just wants to stay in the middle of the pack. Obviously, he would like to pull off a miracle finish in the top 3. I wouldn't even say it's a miracle. Just finish off the non-projected, the unlikely, and finish in that top 3. But ultimately, he's trying to set himself up for playoff success and be the playoff god. So we'll see how that plays off for him. He's going to have Mike Evans this week. Did he play Hubbard this week? Is Hubbard on a bye? Let's take a quick look at that matchup. Joe's matchup. I know he had Khalil Herbert in, like I said. So I know the Panthers are not on a bye. Joe is not playing Hubbard this week. He's going with Williams for the Chiefs, so he's going to have his new player in for him, Mike Evans. We'll see how that plays out for him. With everything considered, like I said, it's going to be up to Matthew Stafford for Josh. Unless he shits the bed, I think Josh wins this matchup. So that was the one big trade of the week, was that 4-player deal. The other one, like I mentioned, was Dalvin Cook going over to the London Lions. And things are shaking up. I don't think you're going to see a lot of trades the rest of the year. I think they pretty much ran their course. I think everybody that's going to trade has traded. You'll probably see 1 or 2 small ones that don't impact anybody much. Maybe somebody flipping a flex player for a flex player to help each other out. That's about the most I think you're going to see the rest of the year. But with all that said, week 7's in the books. We're firmly in week 8. It's Saturday. We have some big games. Michigan versus Michigan State kicking off here in about 45 minutes. I've got to get the fuck out of here. We have Ohio State, Penn State tonight. I believe they're trying to scarlet the shoe. Good luck to the Buckeyes. I don't really give a fuck who wins. Go Blue, go Broncos, go London Lions. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week. Be safe.
Even though I knew exactly how you felt about me, Macho Man, at this point, I was letting everything slide, brother. I was just hoping that the cancer that was tearing you apart might go into remission, that everything would straighten itself out. But when I saw Keen and the big boss man coming down on you,